from the BBC World Service and CBC Podcasts. It's a story about love, deceit, and survival, and it's available now. Find out more at the end of this podcast.
Hello, I'm James Reynolds. Welcome to BBC Earth Conversations on living with power cuts. Around the world, millions of you live with the reality of electricity blackouts. In many cases, it happens every single day. We bring together three women from South Africa, where the power company is struggling to keep the lights on. We also hear from people running businesses in Nigeria and Sri Lanka. And a yoga teacher offers us some wise, sage advice.
Breathe, you have to breathe. A yoga teaches us to let go and accept some of the difficulties and hardships of life. So it's kind of what I've been teaching since COVID, actually.
A theme that runs through all the conversations with all of our guests is frustration. Frustration with creaking energy infrastructure and the inadequate response from various governments. Let's not forget that the war in Ukraine has affected global power supplies, resulting in increased prices. In recent days in South Africa, protesters angry that the electricity keeps going off marched through Johannesburg and Cape Town. The country's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, said that it was understandable that people were fed up, but he warned that problems could not be fixed overnight, though many will point out that this has been going on for years and years. We brought together three women to share their experiences. They are reasonably affluent, but listening to the conversation, you'll soon get a sense that the power cuts affect everybody in society. Let me introduce you then to Navina. She's in Lenasia in Johannesburg. To Machikidi, who's in Kempton Park, also in Johannesburg. And firstly, to Barbara in Ballito in KwaZulu-Natal. That's on the east coast of South Africa.
Well, for 4 to 8 hours a day, it's pitch dark, the air conditioning isn't working. I arrived home last night after 3 weeks in New Zealand, and as I put my foot into the house, it was 7 o'clock at night, 19 hours of travel, and the power cut started at 7. All I wanted was a cup of coffee, just a quick bite to eat, maybe a piece of toast. I had nothing. No lights, no aircon, no toast, no coffee. It was extremely frustrating.
Navina, do you have power at the moment?
I have power for the next 47 minutes and counting, just for a little while longer.
What happened to that 47-minute mark then?
I have to rush home, make sure that the food is cooked, that the kids are doing their homework, my dogs are all fed before the lights go out. You have to manage your time. You actually plan your entire life around the situation at the moment.
And then at that moment when you lose power, how does your life change?
I've made some investments. I've put in solar lighting and gas stove. Those are the things that make life a little bit easier. However, we can't do any ironing or, washing of laundry or any of those things. So it is very frustrating. But at this point, there's not much we can do.
Let's check in with Machikidi. How are you? And do you have enough power at the moment?
It's difficult to answer that question. Half the time, I think, like my two colleagues also said, we're often very frustrated. We don't have power. For me to be able to do this interview, I had to ask my godfather to switch on the generator because I realized when I got home that none of my devices have battery. I've also asked him to quickly go get petrol because we don't even have enough petrol that's still left in the generator. But we have to keep going.
You do try and arrange your life around it. For example, I'm trying to buy a fan that is rechargeable, but they're out of stock in South Africa at the moment, desperately trying to get in. So I'm not sure how long before I can get one of those. My security gate into my home, I'm now living alone in my house. My security is off when the power is off. So I'm extremely vulnerable.
The children are not allowed out of the house when the lights are off because, as Barbara mentioned, the security aspects, it's not safe. So you don't want them wandering around when the lights go out. You never know what dangers they could face. And also, you don't have your phone charged sometimes when you get home from work. So sometimes I'm in the office, I'm busy, I don't have time to charge it. I get home, there's no power. So it's also a security aspect. You can't phone for help. So it's rather concerning.
We have instances where if power was scheduled to leave from 2 o'clock and come back at 4:30, it might not come back because as and when it goes off, We then get a message to say, just as the power was off, some cables were stolen from the substation. And so it seems then load shedding is becoming an opportunity for criminals to break into homes, to steal cables, and further frustrate our livelihoods, far from what we've already explained to you to be our lived realities currently. So it's very, very disheartening.
So it's much more than simple inconvenience. This is about your own safety.
Absolutely. And James, just leading on to what Najakadi was saying, in our municipality, and I'm in Quadagusa on the north coast of Natal, the aged electrical equipment can't handle the power surges when the power comes back on. And so as the power comes back on, it trips due to a fault. And we can be off for another 3, 4, 5 hours due to the fault. Sometimes you get it back on just in time for the next planned power cut. So you can sit for 24 hours with no electricity at all.
And Navina, talk us through how your kids deal with it.
They've got to work within those timelines. So if they have assignments due or if they have homework due, they've got to do it in a minimal space of time. There's not enough time for them to actually enjoy a bit of rest. They've got to just drop whatever they're doing and then get into the books and start doing their homework and get it done before the lights go out.
Is that always possible?
I think I kind of forced them into making it possible, but sometimes no.
James, it's the new
They have no
excuse.
choice.
No longer that the dog ate my homework. It's I couldn't do it because the power was cut.
I see. And when you all go to the shops and speak to the shopkeeper or speak to neighbours, how long is it until you start talking about power cuts?
I would honestly say from the start
It's
of the
literally the
conversation,
first thing
you've
you
done your
talk about.
shopping. Yes. You go in and you want to make a payment and they're offline. You can't process a payment using your card. You can't draw out money from the ATM because there's no signal, there's no power.
And due to the cost of the diesel for the generators, if some of the shops manage to get that, some of the smaller shops just close when the power is cut. So as Navina said, you can't go in and make your purchase. You just have to go to a coffee shop and wait for the 2 hours to go past so you can go and do your purchase. And even then, you can't get hot coffee. You can only get a cold drink
I
because
see.
their coffee machine doesn't work.
When was the last time that any of you had full power to an extent that you never even thought about it?
Christmas
5
Day.
years.
Christmas Day, actually. Christmas Day, we had no kidding, and it was amazing.
For the 3 weeks I was in New Zealand, I didn't know what power cuts were about. But you know what, James? I'm happy to be home, and power cuts or not, I will still call South Africa my home. Even though the power cuts also lead to the failure of the water being able to pump to the reservoirs. So now not only do we have no electricity, we go water outages as well.
That is true, Barbara. I can actually relate to that. I actually got home today and the power's been off for quite a while, I think. We do have water, but it's practically dripping out of the tap because the water pressure is so low at the moment.
We're also facing that challenge of not having enough water. And so you're shedding water, you're shedding power. But I think, like Barbara said, I love it here. I still am proudly a South African who really loves it being home, that is.
I agree. Home is home.
Barbara, Navina and Machikidi in South Africa, still able to find reason to smile and even to laugh, as they say they wouldn't want to live anywhere else. They also explained that power cuts don't only mean losing electricity. They can also affect water supplies, phone and broadband. There is, of course, a significant cost to the economy and to businesses. And it's this that we want to talk about now. As you will appreciate, getting hold of people in areas affected by power cuts is really, really tricky. We spend ages dialing up. Connections don't work. Messages go back and forth. And when we finally get people on the line, the connection is often pretty scratchy. So please do bear with us during the next conversation when we connect with the owners of two businesses in Nigeria and Sri Lanka. What they have to say is important. Both countries have power cuts every day, although, as you'll hear, the situation in Sri Lanka is better than it was last year. Let me introduce you to Kayode, who runs a guest house in Oyo State, Nigeria, and to Dinesh. He runs Fuzu Mantra, a small chain of guest houses and villas in Sri Lanka. I asked them to describe the view from one of their properties. Dinesh first.
I'll pick Valigama, which is in the south. From the view of the top room, we'd see most of the garden. We've got a large garden with a private pool. We are a pet-friendly hotel, so we got a few cats and dogs scurrying around. This is also almost golden hour, so everything is bathed in a nice golden hue. This ocean, you can almost hear it. It's about 5 minutes walk away.
If you're standing at the window of your guest house, you see houses close by. You see trees, a lot of trees and all that. You see a very beautiful compound also.
Talk me through how the power cuts affect your business. Let's begin with Dinesh in Sri Lanka.
We have now down to 2-hour power cuts for the day. But in the worst of times, obviously, with the power cuts lasting about 13 hours, everything from the internet becomes patchy. We can't get our work done. And there's only so much you can explain to our customers. Obviously, the tourism industry here was also on the back of the Easter Sunday bombings and then the COVID. So everybody was reeling from multiple crises. So we were badly equipped to deal with it.
These endless power cuts, did they make you want to tear your hair out?
Yes, even today, this morning, we had a power cut for about an hour. So we work from 9 to 5 generally. And so we pay our employees to work a set number of hours. So when that goes off also, and we can't complete maybe 5 to 6 hours a day, it's costing us on so many fronts.
Kayode in Oyo State in Nigeria, is it the same for you?
Yes, it is actually. If you're trying to get alternative for the power cut and all that, that means you're taking part of your profit to run your generator. For example, we run a guest house. So imagine you using 90% of your profit to buy diesel and petrol and all that, so you can have constant electricity. That means that power cut eats deep into your income. Probably you start thinking of, I don't think this business is, let me just close it down, probably move abroad and all that.
You would move abroad yourself?
Yes, definitely. Because, you can't keep running a business that is not sustainable. The best option is just close down the business and, move abroad and start a new life.
Dinesh in Sri Lanka, you've heard Kayode there saying the temptation is to shut the business and move. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Yes,
Really?
on a daily basis.
Okay.
The fact is, Sri Lanka is a very blessed country when it comes to natural resources. I mean, there's absolute abundance. But the sad fact is, in this day and age, having been used to, power and electricity and all of these things, it's just bizarre that something as basic as electricity is like a running problem for us. But we believe that things will improve and we have to hold on.
When was the last time you can remember having, let's say, a week, 7 days of uninterrupted power?
Probably before March 2022.
So you've been living with this for a year.
We've been living this, yeah.
And Kayode in Nigeria, the last time you had uninterrupted power for a week?
No, I've never seen that before.
Never?
Never.
The issues that we face day in and day out are just, I suppose, are very quite similar. And it's very, I'm sending out my, positive vibes to Nigeria to kind of make through this. But also, I think we need to start holding people who are responsible in places, accountable for these things. Because in this day and age, the fact that we have to sit through the darkness just to get our businesses keep going is just madness.
Dinesh in Sri Lanka and Kayode in Nigeria, each hoping for just a few days with an uninterrupted electricity supply, and each drawing on reserves and reserves of patience. Let's go next to Zimbabwe and this message we received.
Hello, my name is Faith Ruketa and I'm in Zimbabwe. This is where I'm currently completing my undergrad at Great Zimbabwe University, which is a state tertiary institution. We are, just like everyone else in the country, experiencing power cuts. And because we don't have electricity, I am forced to do most of my studying, most of my schoolwork during the day, because at night you won't have electricity and most likely all your electronic gadgets would be dead by then. If push comes to shove, we have to resort to more creative and yet primitive sources of lighting, such as candles, which is the current situation in Zimbabwe for every student. We just have to make do with what we have and just hope something is going to change sooner or later.
Thanks so much to Faith in Zimbabwe for sending us that message. We heard from Dinesh in Sri Lanka a little earlier. I'd like to return to the country now and introduce you to Serena Burgess, an online yoga instructor based in the suburbs of Colombo. We joined her in conversation with Bushra Mahnoor, a young researcher who lives in a small town in northern Pakistan. The country saw a large wave of power blackouts a few days ago. I'll let Serena, and firstly Bushra, tell you what it's like.
They have been happening very frequently since the past couple of weeks. And since a lot of work that I do is on my laptop, often I lose my work or data due to the power cuts. Why am I unfortunate enough to be living at this time in 2023 when everybody has access to the internet, to electricity? They can work fine and they can earn decent income for themselves, but I cannot because of the political instability of my country and because of the energy crisis that we are faced with.
Serena, you must know what Bushra's going through.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yoga's supposed to be relaxing and it just makes everything really stressful. Because you kind of get on and then you're like, oh, is it going to go? And we have emergency light bulbs. It just disrupts everything.
Your students, are they also in Sri Lanka connecting with you online, or are they across the world?
Well, the ones across the world don't have the same issues that I do. I do have some here, and then that's another kind of situation, because if I have power, then sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And so I have one client who we sort of set up a class for Wednesday so that we have Thursday and Friday both as backup days, just in case Wednesday doesn't happen.
I see.
I mean, sometimes it's okay and you can get on the hotspot and you can get through the hour and a bit. It's just nothing's reliable.
It's funny, isn't it, Serena? Because, of course, some people, and I know many people who enjoy yoga, they do so to relieve themselves of the stresses of ordinary life. And you're experiencing those stresses. Do you, as a yoga instructor, have any tips for those who are going through power cuts, who think yoga will be my escape?
You're going to have to get yourself a couple of practices that you can do by yourself in the dark. I think is the first thing. In the dark. Tips: breathe. You have to breathe. Yoga teaches us to let go and accept some of the difficulties and hardships of life. So it's kind of what I've been teaching since COVID, actually. It just feels like an extension of all the change and uncertainty that started in 2020. It just hasn't stopped for us here.
I do not practice yoga, but there are certain other things that I do. So we have this support group of women. We talk about certain things in order to relieve stress. We have these monthly meetings, etc. This has been helping me cope with this entire situation.
Bushra, how many hours of power cuts are there a day for you?
Well, we have power cuts after every hour or every couple of hours. So if we had electricity from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., we are not going to have electricity from 2 to 3 p.m. And some days we do not have electricity for 8 hours straight. As a person who works from home, it is a huge problem for me because there are relatively less power outages during the night. So I have to stay awake through the night and work so that I can keep up with these deadlines. And since the inflation is at high rise, I cannot afford losing the clients and my work this way.
I sympathise completely with Bushra. The crisis that they're going through there sounds very, very similar to the crisis that we're facing here. It's so frustrating, and kind of just throw your hands up and don't really know what you can do, especially if you work from home and you don't have a generator. It's really hard.
And I know that you're not just thinking, Serena, about your own business. You've got your family and your kids to think about. How are their lives affected?
Well, my daughter's just done her mocks for her O-levels, and a lot of stuff went online. I think I'm relating everything back to COVID because sort of the way we live became more online and sort of energy dependent because of that. And so, you know, for her, downloading papers to work on or accessing her Microsoft Teams, which is how school communicates with them, and study packs and all that sort of stuff has been really hard for her. And I just hear her sighing as soon as the power goes out. She's like, oh, it's gone again.
Who's more patient about the power cuts, you or her?
The kids have been remarkably resilient. There's just a lot of sort of eye rolling and huffing, and then we just get on with something else that we can do. Yeah, with the emergency light bulb in sort of very dim light.
What works? Are there things in Pakistan and Sri Lanka that you can say, yes, this always works, this is always reliable?
Oh, not to be too pessimistic, but nothing feels like it's working particularly well here in Sri Lanka at the moment. Everything's in crisis right now. So we have protests, public transport systems falling apart. Here's something that works. We have a rationing QR code system for petrol. That kind of works.
That
if
works.
You can survive with 20 litres a week, then yes, that works.
And Bushra, in Pakistan, what works?
I think that there are not a lot of things that are working right now. Being a Gen Z person who has seen a lot of uncertainty while growing up in this country with unstable political situation. So I really don't think that anything is working at this point, and I am very hopeless as well.
Tell me about the life that you'd like to have.
A day in my life would include being able to wake up with working gas and electricity so that I can make myself breakfast, do my work, and then also have some rest time in order to focus and build on the community work and help the people around me, have some spare time as well. I cannot anymore be frustrated every day over these usual power cuts and not being able to make food and not being able to get warm water to take bath. I don't want to be worrying about these things. I want to focus my energies on helping other people, on building a community and working towards better goals.
I'm hoping actually that this is part of a cycle that humanity can somehow claw its way out of, and there might be some hope for the future. I do believe that being Gen X, I grew up in probably one of the most peaceful and prosperous eras that humanity has kind of known. And maybe it is that just humans are cyclical in this way and we destroy things and then hopefully we rebuild them. It's not a great situation to be in, but I'm hoping that there's hope somewhere down the line because I have 2 children who I'm really hopeful that their future is better than this.
Serena in Sri Lanka and Bushra in Pakistan. We wish them all the best. We wish them light. We wish them power. Thank you to all of our guests this week for sharing their experiences on BBC OS Conversations on living with power cuts. I'm James Reynolds. Thanks for listening.